Thanks for joining me today and welcome back to my FTB Unstable series. This is Danny and we are continuing with Psy today, which is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite mods. I am really loving this mod. So we're just going to jump right back into the tutorial and we should get it finished before the end of the episode today and hopefully be able to do some really cool stuff. Alternative casting introduces 3 new types of bullets. We can now use the grenade spell bullet, the projectile spell bullet, and the circle spell bullet. The difference between all these is the focal point. So we also have this focal point selector. So the focal point essentially is the point at which the spell is cast. So for our regular bullets, like for this one that we made the move one with, the focal point is us. We are the focal point. For a bullet, for a projectile, the bullet is actually the entity that is the focal point, because the focal point returns an entity. So this gives us an entity, which it actually will give us the same thing for a regular bullet. It'll give us the same entity as the caster. So we have our selector caster, which returns an entity, player, living, and that entity is us when we're casting the spell. This focal point will return the exact same thing if we're using a regular bullet. If we're using the projectile bullet, the projectile will actually cast the spell once it comes in contact with something. So just like an arrow or something like that, it's going to fly through the air and then it's going to hit something, either a block or another entity. At that point, the focal point of the spell will be on that entity, on that bullet, as it is colliding with something in the world. The grenade is similar in that it is a projectile. Instead of casting the spell at the point that it collides with something, it just casts the spell after 5 seconds, I believe it is. That's the other one. 3 seconds. I'm sorry. 3 seconds. So if we shoot it straight up in the air, it's just going to go for 3 seconds, and then the spell will be cast, and the focal point will be wherever that projectile happens to be after 3 seconds. The spell circle basically casts the spell 20 times within 5 seconds. Oh, we just have to use the focal point. So why don't we try doing some kind of a projectile... Let's do a projectile explosion again. Why not? Except this time it will actually be a projectile. Instead of just exploding at the nearest entity that I'm looking at, we can have it explode at the nearest entity at which the focal point lands. I like that idea. So I can actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this out, and then I can actually import from clipboard, because remember I had that other spell in the clipboard. But instead of having all this complicated stuff to get our position, which is the vector array cast, all we really have to do with this spell, the entity position of our focal point. Because remember, this gives us an entity, because the bullet itself, or the projectile itself, is actually an entity. So we're going to take a projectile spell bullet. We could do a grenade too, but we'll do a projectile for now. Okay, so it's going to shoot a projectile. You got my thorns. It's kind of similar to the one that we were using before, I guess. Let's just... Hooray! I wonder why I had to do that twice before it. Oh, because it wasn't... Nice. So it kind of looks the same as the other one did. But it has a longer range, actually. Because it's going to shoot the entity closest to where the projectile lands. Look at that. That's a nice range. Oh, that hurt me because I ran out of psi energy. So I was just close enough to that creeper. Nice. Love that. Woo! Okay, target was non-existent. I still actually like, let's see. I still actually like this one better. Because it's immediate. Oh, look at that. It blew him up even after he was dead. That's great. There we go. Oh, must have been more than 6 blocks. I have it set to break, no, 5 blocks actually. I have it set to break 5 blocks because 6 is too many for my my current CAD level. Nice. That's even better than the Tinker's Construct Lumber Axe. Except that it's only doing a straight line of 5 blocks. So if there's more than 5 blocks, like, it's just gonna go up 5. It's not gonna go all the way to the top. We're working with Blockworks now, level 6 Blockworks. And we have all these new things. So what we just did was the break block sequence. So here we have our trick Blake Brock. It's a tongue twister. Trick Blake Jesus Christ. Trick break block sequence, which requires our position, our target, and our max. So the position is where I'm looking. So this should look familiar by now. Again, it's selector caster. We're taking our vector ray cast, which is our position, the ray being the direction we're looking in. And that's just going to grab the first block collision from our position in the direction that we're looking. And that's the position where it's going to start breaking blocks. And then our target is just a vector that's 0, 5, 5. So it's just 0 in the x direction, 0 in the z direction, and 5 is the y direction. So 5 blocks in the y direction. And then the max is 5. So it may as well be. So we could calculate a vector over here, and then it'll only break up to 5 blocks because that's our max, and that's required because that determines the cost of the spell. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to place a bunch of blocks on the block that we're looking at. But this is going to be a little bit more complicated because what I want to do is what you would expect Minecraft to do. Whichever side we're looking at, we want the block to be placed on that side, right? What? What was that? And then I would like it to place the 5 blocks in the direction of the side of the block that we're looking at. So, you know, I don't want to just like look here and then have it place 5 blocks in a vertical direction. That's not what you would expect in Minecraft, right? You expect it to place the blocks 5 blocks in the direction that you're looking at. Kind of like the Builder's Wand Focus does. What we've been doing so far is we've been coming up with a vector that represents the block that we're looking at, right? So if I'm looking at this block from whatever direction up to 32 blocks away, that block is going to be the position of that vector. We don't want to place a block there, right? We don't want to place a block in that block. We want to place it... What is that? We want to place it on that block, or maybe next to the block, depending on which block face we're looking at. And we can do that, but we have to use the raycast, our new raycast, vector axis raycast function, or piece, in order to determine which side we're looking at. And it's going to give us a vector, of course, like everything else, that is essentially going to be 2 zeros and a 1, depending on which side we're looking at. If we're looking at the top of the block, it's going to give us 0, 1, 0, because x, y, z, y would be 1, because we're at the top of the block, so positive y. If we're looking at the bottom of the block, it's going to be 0, minus 1, 0, because we're looking at the negative x, or negative y side of the block. So then we can take that vector and we can sum it with the block that we're looking at. So if we're looking at this block, and let's say this block's position in the world is 10, 10, 10. It's not, but let's say it is. We're looking at the top of the block, which means we're looking at the 0, 1, 0 side of the block. We can add those two vectors, and we're going to get 10, 11, 10, which should be that spot. Place block. So we're just going to place a single block. That's pretty cool, though. You can place a block from 32 blocks away. So we did have to do a little bit of basic vector math for this. We have our caster here, our direction, our look. We have our vector ray cast. This is the one that we've played with quite a bit already, which is basically, it has a position and a ray. The position is our position in this case, and the ray is the direction we're looking. So that's going to give us the block that we're looking at. And then we also have this vector axis raycast, which is telling us, like we were talking about before, the side of the block that we're looking at. So this would be 0, 1, 0 if we're looking at the top of the block, or something to that effect. And this again takes the position, it takes the same parameters really, the position of the entity and the direction that the entity is looking as the ray. We add these two together. So if we're looking at the top of the block, for instance, it's going to increase y by 1 using the vector sum. So vector A and vector B get added, and then we place block. So that's pretty simple work. For removing the block, that is break block, because I used the same logic. And of course this isn't going to work because it's going to try to break the block in the empty space next to the block that I'm looking at. So we can actually simplify this quite a bit to fix this. All we have to do is go like this, just get rid of this completely. And we could just put another connector here. And there we go. That should fix it. So if we select our break block, we should now be able to break those blocks from very far away. Hooray! Oh, the only problem is it drops them. So we'll have to come up with another spell to pick up items. It's probably the fastest way to break blocks in Minecraft. Hooray! Our next level is Psy-Metal Infusion. Awesome. That means that we can go back and do the one that I couldn't do, and that's placing multiple blocks in the direction of the side of the block that I'm facing. Because we couldn't do that because our CAD wasn't capable of it. So it's only one thing that we need to put on here, and that's infusion. Hopefully that won't take too much. Hooray! So we now have a brand new Psy-Metal CAD assembly, which brings up our efficiency and potency. I got an extended battery, which brings our overflow to 200, overclocked CAD core, which brings up our complexity to 13, and our projection to 3, and our signaling CAD socket, which brings up our bandwidth to 7, and our sockets, our number of sockets is now 6. Hooray! And we now can do some much more complicated spells, and more of them. There we go, 5 blocks, and that went up because I was looking at the top of the block. If we go on this side, it'll place 5 blocks this way. Nice. That's how we did that. Placing a block sequence, it requires a position, which is the start position where the first block is placed. A target, that would be a vector pointing in the direction that the blocks are going. And then the max, which determines the cost. So what I've done is, for our position, of course, we have the same position that we were using for the place block, place single block, and that's the vector sum of the vector raycast of the player, of the caster, and the vector axis raycast of the caster, which of course both of these take the position and the entity look. And then the target is the vector axis raycast, so that's the side of the block we're looking at, vector multiplied by a constant number. This is actually what you would call a scalar multiplication, where you multiply a constant number times a vector. If we're looking at the top of a block, again, to keep it simple, it's going to be 0, 1, 0. We multiply that times 5, and it's going to be 0, 5, 0. So we basically just replicated the Builder's Wand Focus from Thaumcraft, but it's actually faster. It requires no V. Nice. The only thing it doesn't do is replace blocks. So I'm moving the block toward the direction I'm looking at, which is kind of the opposite of what a piston does, I suppose. Of course, we could reverse that if we wanted to push the block instead of pull it. Does it work on water blocks? Nope. Interesting. It goes through water. Oh, right, because it only works on blocks that can be pushed with a piston, basically, or moved or picked up with Silk Touch. This one is actually pretty simple. We have the move block. Now all we're doing is we're taking our vector raycast. Well, the move block takes a position, so that's the position of the block, and a target, which is an axial vector. Like we talked about last time, the axial vector is a vector that is pointing in a single one of the 6 directions, parallel to one of the x, y, or z axes. So the target, of course, is the vector axis raycast of the block we're looking at. So the side of the block we're looking at, and the position. So it's pretty easy. And we could actually, if you wanted to push the block instead of pull it, we could easily just put a multiplier here, vector multiply. And vector A would be this. The number would just be -1. So now it'll push blocks instead of pulling them. But it's a little harder to find blocks in the world that you can push, because because it's pushing it against the side that we're looking at. So like if I click here, it would try to push it into that block, but of course it can't. So we have to find a block like that. There. And if we click on the top side, it'll push it down. Actually, let's see what happens when we try to... Okay, so it just fails. It doesn't do anything if we try to push it where it can't be pushed. Zombie pigman? Hooray! Nice. That is Smite. So here it is. We've got our caster, entity look, entity position going into our vector raycast, which gives us the point that we're looking at. Selecting nearby animals within a 6-block radius, and then we're selecting the closest animal to that same point, that vector raycast point. We're getting the position of that entity, and we're doing trick smite. Hooray! Movement advances, which gives us blink, mass blink. Oh, it blinks everyone forward. And add motion to mass. Adds motion to all entities in a target entity list. And max exodus moves all entities in a target entity list to a target position. Oh, I'm going to have fun with that. I can now blink. I wonder if this will blink us into a block. Nope. Oh, you know what? It kind of did, didn't it? Let's see. Yep. It definitely did. Yeah, it's just trick blink, entity, caster, well, target, distance. Target, caster, distance, constant number. Loop casting. That gives us our loop cast index, a modulus operator, which is the remainder, and then division. Sounds simple enough. The loop cast spell bullet will just run a spell over and over and over again, as long as I'm holding my CAD. As soon as I let it go, it'll stop. Place wall. Yay! It worked. Nice. And what's cool about it is that it will place the wall in the direction that you're looking. So this is a fairly basic loop spell. We're using the place block sequence. This is pretty similar to the last place block sequence we did that just did the 5 blocks, except that instead of using the vector axis raycast to determine which direction to place the blocks, I always have them placing them in the y axis. So we have our place block sequence. The position of the block that it's placing is the entity look operation vector raycast summed with the vector axis raycast, which is then summed with the entity axial look, so that's the direction that we're looking in, times the loop cast index. So how many times have we looped? So we start when we run a loop spell using our loop cast bullet. The spell will run 4 times a second, so once every quarter second, and every time it runs, the loopcast index will be incremented by 1. So the first time it runs, it's 0, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we increment the vector in the direction that we're looking 1 every loop. Greater infusion. Hooray. Oh my, that hurt me. That actually took more psi energy than I have? Really? 3250 psi energy. Wow, crazy. So the positive effects, these are pretty self-explanatory. We can do speed, haste, strength, jump boost, water breathing, fire resistance, regen, and invisibility to any entity. Of course, my favorite entity to do this to would be myself. Caster, trick, speed, constant 2, that would be the power, and the number is 10. I mean, the time is 10, so that's 10 seconds. Hooray! So now we're even faster. Nice. That is crazy fast. And our psi energy regenerates fast enough that we can do it again before it wears out. Tool casting gives us three more pieces. Block broken, which is just a vector pointing, or a vector of the position of the block that we just broke with one of our psi tools. This tells us the side of the block broken, so that would be like the 0, 1, 0 vector or whatever. And then the attack target, that would give us an entity of a target that we hit with the sword. So the pickaxe actually works kind of like the CAD, where we can give it spells. All right, I've got 2 spells on this thing. One of them is called Break 6. It actually breaks 12, but ooh, that works nicely. I like that. So a couple things about the tools. They do repair themselves using your psi energy as long as you do not have them in your hand. So if you watch my psi energy bar on the right, if I deselect this tool, every once in a while my psi drops a little bit, my psi energy on the right drops a little bit, and that energy goes into the tool to repair. So we never really have to worry about those tools breaking on us. I mean, as long as you keep an eye on the durability. Another thing, they do hold 3 cells each, or 3 spells each, although you do have 4 slots when you look at it, because there's always going to be an empty one. So if you ever want to run it without, or just use the pickaxe without a spell on it, you can do that. By the way, I'm saving all my cells, all of my spells in a text file. You can just export to clipboard, and it'll basically paste this into kind of a serialized text thing. And then you could just copy the text right out of your text file or whatever, or paste bin or wherever you happen to have it, and boom, it all comes back. So this is the Break 6, which should actually be called Break 10, because at first I did 6 blocks, and then I decided eventually, and actually technically it's Break 11, because we break a block with the pick, and once the block is broken, we get a selector that tells us the vector, giving us the position of the empty space within which the block had existed before we broke it. We're using the break block sequence, which we used earlier, which takes a position, which is the first block that it breaks. It takes a target, which is the block that it's going to go break to, and then a max, which is the max number of blocks that it's going to break. So in this case, we break this block. We take the broken block side because we want it to break blocks in the direction opposite the side that we broke the block. So we're actually going to do a vector subtract. We're subtracting the block broken side vector. So that's a axial vector, just like the axial look vector, which side are we looking at when we look at a block. In this case, it's which side did we break the block on, which technically is the same because we were looking on that side when we broke it. But at the time the spell is cast, the block is no longer there. So we are we're subtracting that so that we're going, instead of going out in this direction, we're going in that direction. So we subtract that vector from the we subtract the broken side vector from the broken block sector, and that gives us our starting block. And then our target is going to be our axial vector again, so which side we're pointing at, minus 10. So we're going to do the vector multiply again, minus 10. We're almost through our whole tutorial thing, so once we're done with the tutorial, then we can start doing some really interesting stuff. So next is negative effects, which is obviously wither, slowness, the bad stuff, weakness, and ignite. Nice. Ta-da. So of course there isn't much to say here. Really, everything in this group works exactly as expected. Have fun. So we have to do wither before we can go on to the other thing. So I'm going to copy my spell that I was using to smite stuff, and we're just going to change it to wither. The target, power, let's do 2. Let's see if we can afford that. And then time would be another number. Let's say 10 seconds. Probably won't survive much longer than that. So power 2, time 10 seconds. That's too expensive for us, so let's try 5 seconds. Not 105. Just, it looks like we'll only be able to do 2.5 seconds. Okay, let's do this. Let's do 10 seconds. Let's just do wither 1. An Enderman, huh? Alright. That's fine. Hooray! He's got wither. And he wasn't even mad at us until we looked at him. Interesting. So we don't have to look at him. All we have to do is go near him. And he doesn't seem to realize that we are the ones who did it. He's not mad at us. Look at that. This one is, though. Final level. Eidos manipulation. Okay, so this is the anchor. So we can anchor ourselves here. So, boom. Now it gave me 10 seconds. So let's say we want to go out and face some like really crazy boss or something. And we don't know how long we can stand up to this guy. So we're over here now. Whoop! Now we're back here. Nice. So that's the anchor. So whenever we run the anchor spell, it just sets whatever spot we're at now as the place it's going to send us back after so many seconds. So I set it to 10 seconds, and of course the more seconds you set it to, the more expensive it's going to be. And then the other Eidos one is Eidos Reversal. So let's do that one for 10 seconds. Is not 2010. How about 10 seconds as well? And we'll go out. Just kind gonna stand here. Hey, creeper. Whoa. Nice. Oh, that's nice. I like completed the entire tutorial. So I guess we're done, right? No more to do. So actually, in the next episode, I'm going to make some of the more advanced tools and such. And we're going to make some more advanced spells. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of playing around off camera too, just to kind of, just to have some stuff to show you when we get back and some interesting spells to show you. I may post some of these spells on Pastebin and put links to them below if you're interested in any of the spells that I did today and you want to be able to quickly set them up in here. I know none of the spells I did today were like all that complicated or terribly interesting, but if you want to learn a little bit from what we did and be able to poke around and make changes on your own, just let me know. I'll put a Pastebin link in the description. And if there's anything in particular that you want me to do in the next episode, any interesting whatever, let me know. I will probably have already started working on some stuff before you see this, but I may still have some time to do some more stuff. So let me know what you'd like to see me do in Sai. I hope you join me next time. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and please feel free to leave comments in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this, please don't forget to click the like button. Thanks for watching. Bye.